GM. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, how we doing today?
I am double downing the duties of doing this on the go while to the dentist appointment. So, unfortunately, we got to keep it more brief than we usually do and not run over time. But yeah, we'll just wait for Matt and everyone else to join as well. Um, yeah, it should be a fun one. I think the most exciting thing that I think that I've seen this week is all the rage around Bitcoin. So there's lots to fill in, especially as larger institutions and larger, Bitcoin or crypto companies start to join in on, the Bitcoin revolution. I think we got a lot to cover.
Indeed. And I'm trying out my mic today. Is it sounding better? How's it sounding?
I don't know, man. It
Mid?
sounds pretty mid.
Oh, dude. Not working probably. I'm going to unplug it then. I'm going to figure this out on a different space.
Bro, these morning OP talk vibes are not starting off great.
That's the best way to kick off the vibes is just call out bad vibes.
Well, we got to just, acknowledge it, move on, reestablish a base here. But also, since this is an ongoing tradition that was hopefully going to continue on, we just have to take a temperature of, what else is happening. Seems like there's like 3 other spaces going on, So just being the pragmatic voice in the room here. Hey, Jan, we did this for you, by the way. Welcome. Come on up.
Let's
Farmers at
go.
the dentist.
What do you think about Coinbase on BTC?
Well, sir, that's one thing that we wanted to talk about because I think it's one of the biggest news items of the week.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really, it's really a BM, not a GM today. Yeah, I mean Coinbase coming in with CB BTC or Charlie CB Spears BTC as he likes to coin all of these things. Is a massive news item, of course. I think we can start there, and it just shows that Base and Coinbase itself is looking at capturing the audience. Udi actually brought this up on the Ordinal show, which I thought was a really good comment of everyone on the Ordinal side and the Rune side contributed to the fact that Coinbase actually cares about this pretty deeply. I mean, it's an opportunity that they can't seem to miss. So yeah, it's big news, and obviously their investment from Coinbase Ventures into Satflow, which is L1 marketplace DEX that Robert is building, was also an interesting news piece on top of their announcement a couple of days ago. So we got double dipping of good news and layering it all together.
Yeah, I think this is a
Yeah, exactly.
massive moment for sure. I mean,
So Jan, we
Bunzi, turn up your mic, man. Can't
yeah,
hear you.
Bunsy, we can't hear you. Jan, what's going on with Express? I see you guys are shipping some new features. The Runes enjoyers are probably happy that they can do mobile app swaps now through some of the partners that you guys have set up. I think that's a massive change in the experience that I think many people were anticipating. I'm kind of like a phone maximalist in a lot of ways, where I just do degenning on the go because what's better than buying things on the plane, at the airport, at security. you, Anyone that has actually met me in a conference knows that I'm like 24/7 degenning and buying things and whatnot. But Jan, nice to have you up here.
Yeah, good to see you guys. GM. Yeah, things have been busy and will continue to be busy, man. Like, I think, we discussed it this morning. I feel it in my bones. Like, we're going to be back very soon, Like, we're seeing the first signs. I'm looking at Pops. Pops is fucking pumping the second day in a row. So I like to see that. We need some more world peace in this fucking crazy world. So you like to see Pops going up, going through the roof. And I think we're on the brink of some fucking crazy growth again in ordinals because Builder vibes are all time high. I'm excited, obviously, for Matt and the team at Arch. What they're gonna ship and how we're gonna get them involved in in this DeFi renaissance. That is connected to Xverse and all of these things that we're shipping. So yeah, I'm just excited, man. I don't know, man. I just live for this shit.
Yeah, I guess for the audience that maybe hasn't necessarily been too mobile oriented, but I guess can you walk us through why and how you guys are doing the mobile app swaps? Just for simplicity's sakes, and
Yeah, man. I
how.
mean, I
Yeah,
mean, it's the same for basically the extension as well. I mean, we're just doing aggregation, right? So we're not building this stuff ourselves because obviously it's complex and it's also there's many other people that are gonna go after this opportunity, including Arch and including obviously DotSwap and Ordzar and many of these guys. They're going after this swap opportunity, and so there's no point for us to like build another solution, right? So for us as a wallet, we're basically the gateway into this ecosystem in many ways. And so we're playing very, very important role. And so I think the value that we can bring to the ecosystem is really simplify the user experience and aggregate the liquidity, right? And make sure that whenever you want to swap something, either on the go or when you're sitting at home and you have 15 screens in front of you and you're doing technical analysis, like you want to swap something and you can swap it because there is liquidity and it doesn't really matter where it comes from. It can come from swap, it can come from other providers, but the good experience is when you want to swap something, when you want to buy something, you can with one click, right? And so that's ultimately what we are shooting for. It's going to take a while, obviously, because the liquidity is not there yet. People are also, some people just don't like these things. Some people don't like to deposit their dog and their pups and their Billy into these like basically centralized LPs because that's the situation. That's the reality of things. So some people don't like it, and I respect that. I would never like push people to do it. Like, if you don't want to do it, and obviously, there is a risk. So please don't do that. Like, only do it if you understand the risks and if you know the company or whatever. And so we're never promoting that. Like, we're never encouraging people to do this, especially not at this point because it's so early yet. And what we focus on is really just the atomic swaps in the wallet, right? So for a user that is using Xverse, they don't care. Like you just go to Xverse, you want to buy DOC, and you can buy it. It's an atomic swap. It's a PSBT. Nobody is taking custody of your assets. It happens in one block. It's confirmed immediately, and that's basically how we improve that experience, and we want to improve it further. So I'm just super excited you know what Matt and Bunzi and Jake and everybody here and obviously many other people in the space are working on because that's kind of the immediate future of Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And the focus right now, I think, has been all around runes. We're probably going to have more token standards. I know when we were talking about when BRC 20s dropped, you're just like, yeah, so what do you think about this tap thing? And should we just start to adopt every single token standard on Bitcoin? And we had kind of a pretty in-depth discussion on that. Obviously, runes still haven't succeeded. So I think that's one part. So before we start to add more token standards into the mix and create applications for them, I think if we all just focus on one element that we all kind of mutually agree on, I think it leads to a better user experience. I have in the audience right now, and as a speaker, Jake. Jake and I kind of go way back in the ordinal days. Actually, he's been a massive advocate for broader fungibility, usability, tradability of these assets. Back when Bitcoin Punks kind of came out, that was one of the elements that was a struggle at the time. We didn't necessarily have an ordinals NFT marketplace. And Jake from Emblem Vault and Robert kind of created a solution that allowed you to wrap your Bitcoin assets in these vaults, which then allowed Bitcoin Punks to trade on marketplaces such as OpenSea and Ordinals Market, which was, to my understanding, basically a fork of OpenSea. Jake, what's going on? Nice to have you up here, man.
Dude, it's been what, probably 6 months, I think, since we've had a Spaces conversation, and then next thing I know, I check in on you, and you're a Spaces host now. Why don't you have it in your bio yet?
I think we're still working on the teething issues and just getting this off the ground and having some fun with it. Both with me and Bunsey and I
Whoa,
think there's some
whoa,
static. I
whoa,
don't know,
whoa! Talk
Jake.
about Spaces host, Jake. Jake's the Spaces host coming in with some fucking feedback galore. What is that, dude? Are you making dubstep?
Is it coming from me? My bad. I don't know. Can you hear me okay now? I don't know.
Dude, you got like do a
No,
lap.
yeah, I think you're in space or something. There's some radio waves coming in.
Yeah, this dude's in a Volt just crossing chains right now, like during traffic.
Is it still there now? I don't
That's
know.
That's the new Vibrate to Earn proof of vibration device that we're coming out with next fall.
You hear
So
that,
by the
ladies?
way,
Proof of vibration.
I'm at ETH Toronto right now, and actually one of the centralized exchanges here is called ShakePay, and ShakePay actually allows you to shake your phone all day to earn sats. Pretty comedic, actually.
Damn. Well, I don't know what's going on here. I just is it still there now? I think I made an adjustment.
No, it's better. It's better.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm set up in a different location than my original spot. But dude, it's awesome to see you guys, hosting spaces together. I think everyone up here has been hosting spaces for a little while. I'm a little bit of a boomer in the sense that I prefer podcasts, but there's no denying that spaces is, where the entertainment and where the engagement is. But, just kind of moving on to Farmer Joe's point, I think now we're starting to see, what Emblem did for Bitcoin punks and ordinals in the early stages is a little bit more of the kind of the macro style, right? Where you're taking Bitcoin assets and moving it to Ethereum. I think now with, the proliferation of these 10 to 20 different meta protocols and execution layers, and maybe a handful of them, maybe 30% of them are creating their own native assets. There's going to need to be some sort of intra-operability between all of these, right? Things like Fractal and OpNet, right? And I know Arc and some of these other ones. And it's going to be interesting to see who is going to be able to do that. I know with like Fractal, they say you can wrap your BRC20 and runes. And I think Tap is trying to tackle this as well. And I think Opcat, I believe, solves this, but we're really uncertain when that happens. But if we can't solve this interoperability, then I think the entire Bitcoin season 2 community is just going to be even more fragmented than it already is.
Yeah, totally agree. I think some developers are actually taking the approach of, maybe it's still too early to build on Bitcoin. But I'd argue that by the time that they decide to build on Bitcoin and everything is kind of clear and de-risked, it's probably too late for them to even catch up to some of the builders that are, relentless in pushing the boundaries. Obviously, we're all just trying to solve the problems of today because they exist and they're, worthwhile to do so. But yeah, I mean, Jake, for Emblem Vault and Bitcoin Punks, I think that was like one of the large inspirations of Pups even going to Solana as a meme coin. Much like NFTs, were best on, Ethereum in terms of marketplaces, volume, and so forth. Um, I thought meme coins were best on Solana as a byproduct of that. That's kind of why I decided to bring Pups onto Solana to begin with. So that's a little bit of a backstory of where the inspiration came from.
Let's go. Well, I really appreciate it. It's been a crazy year and a half journey. With everyone actually here on stage, being on spaces with Jan and the Ordinal Show, working with Bunsey on Omnisat and Emblem Markets recently, and then me, you, and Joe just hanging out and having these kind of cool conversations. And now all of us individually, kind of have our own projects and have grown to have quite amount of success, but we're really now still in the early stages. From the Emblem Vault side too, once we get our V1 systems upgraded, we're going to take a pretty large focus in Bitcoin and hopefully solve this kind of intra-operability and just the interoperability between the rest of the space, because you know it seems like the kind of Bitcoin L2 kind of idea, or that everything's a Bitcoin L2, is starting to become even more of a meme. But as we know with meme culture, right, the longer that people keep continuing to say it, the more likely that it is to become. So really for us, we're like, if everything's a Bitcoin L2, the biggest competition is right ETFs and centralized exchanges and kind of wrapped assets. And for us, we have they have a huge lead on us, right, and a lot of capital, but we are on chain, right, and that's the huge advantage. So if we all kind of work together and figure out right the best way to figure this out, I mean, in terms of everything is a Bitcoin L2, I think in the long grand scheme of things, we'll be able to supersede them. But we have to work together to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, Base is now a Bitcoin L2 as of this week, apparently. So that's an interesting one. And Coinbase is trying to be the interoperability solution as a centralized entity, as a if you want to frame it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's all bullish. I was talking about this on my show yesterday. I saw Udi put out a post and he said that, the synthetic Bitcoin wars are going to be, devastating to the EVM Bitcoin L2s. But I actually think the complete opposite. I think now it just adds more liquidity to the market, because now you could take, right, if it's going to be on Base, they're going to be ERC20s. And now you're literally taking stagnant capital that's sitting on Bitcoin and now putting it to where on Base. And as we know, generally some of that capital will then find its way to the rest of the market, and then eventually some of it will just be unwrapped and then just used natively on Bitcoin. That's kind of like the later stage of everything.
Well, I think, one of the most important pieces there is it's devastating only to one coin. And the coin that it's devastating to is actually Ethereum.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty interesting thought. Yeah, Ethereum's going through some pretty heavy growing pains right now, right? The Bitcoin Solana barbell thesis is more as clear as day as ever, on where this is going. For Ethereum, I still have a long term belief in it and that they'll figure it out. But going into this cycle, right, to me, Ethereum's becoming more of a importation layer, and Bitcoin right now is more of an exportation layer. Like with Ethereum, you see it's all becoming institutional DeFi, and you're seeing all these synthetic assets like wrapped assets and bridged assets and vaulted assets all going to Ethereum to be used. I think that only continues to grow. I know the gas fees are an issue for retail, but I think for the institutional side, I don't think they're seeing Ethereum as ultrasound money. I think they're seeing it as their playground. Whereas Bitcoin
Yeah.
right now, sorry, 1 second. Just like we're Bitcoin right now because we lack functionality. Right now, we're all about building the best assets. Right now, it's runes and ordinals for fungible and non-fungible standards. Who knows if that continues, but that seems to be kind of the winning case. And now we're kind of figuring out what to do with them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I know this is going to sound crazy, but Ethereum can become a Bitcoin L2 if they really choose to. I mean, there's this philosophy on the chain itself that will, maybe eventually allow you to pay gas fees in any token. So imagine that gas fee token be BTC, and all of the Ethereum is just, staked in a proof of stake network, and suddenly we're using BTC more extensively. I'm a fan of like individuals using BTC on other chains. I was just talking to an Asian focused team not too long ago, and they just got started, as a DeFi project, on a lot of these Bitcoin L2s, but they're also deployed on other EVM environments. And they were telling me within the last 4 months, they were able to accrue close to 500 million in TVL, primarily from Bitcoin itself. So, unlocking Bitcoin as a core asset is still a hugely valuable proposition. And 500 million might sound like a lot of money, and of course it is in a nominal basis, but on a 1.2 trillion dollar chain, that's a drop in the bucket. that's a handful of miners and dozens of users, if you really want to think about it in terms of how some of this is really concentrated. And to be fair, like I'm sure some of it is mercenary capital and just farmers. But again, that moves the needle for a lot of these projects to get attention and appeal, and it moves the needle for Bitcoin becoming a much more dominant asset in DeFi itself. Where it lands on the L1, obviously where we're playing is a different story. But I can see a future where we use it in a similar way, much like we are used to on some of these L2s, EVM environments, and so forth, that it becomes useful and yield bearing. And, I think that we're getting closer and closer, but it's just, significantly more difficult to do that on the base layer than it is in L2.
Yeah, you brought up a handful of good points. One, Adam and I were talking about this on our show yesterday about the MasterCard times MetaMask announcement. And one thing I see happening there, two things, is if you have a yield bearing stable coin, right? If you're using Athena, you could basically buy groceries while, making money. On the other side of this as well, if you start wrapping your Bitcoin, you can literally use your Bitcoin to pay for groceries or pay for coffee, right? That's been because it'll be an ERC20. And that's literally been the entire, Bitcoin Maxi vision, although it's not going to be happening with native Bitcoin. It's going to be happening with ERC20 or wrapped Bitcoin or vaulted Bitcoin or CB Bitcoin, whatever you say. Have you considered anything like that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think some of these chains just are not necessarily equipped to handle native Bitcoin, which is, kind of why a lot of the attention, interest, and capital from an investment flows perspective is really going to, base layer builders or teams that are building as close to the base layer as possible, like Arch and, like Statflow, which just recently announced a pretty substantial raise from Coinbase Ventures, Variant, and others. So I think like the market opportunity is really just to try and keep it as close to the security layer as possible. Because not everyone is going to want to have these Bitcoin derivative assets floating around everywhere, right? Like it's just, to me, I was just never comfortable holding wrapped Bitcoin to begin with in EVM, because I'm like, oh well, this is just a centralized custodian, and if this centralized custodian doesn't necessarily do a good job, then I'm as good as using a centralized exchange. So I always try and keep my assets, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or other tokens, on the layer that it's originated in and native to, unless the trust assumptions themselves are, I would say, reasonable.
Yeah, this is actually something we talk about at Emblem as well. Is the idea that there's this kind of weird. I don't know how to say the situation, but at Emblem, right, when you have your Bitcoin NFTs on Ethereum, people always feel very anxious about holding it there, or they feel like they are obligated to hold it there because they're using our technology. But we at even Adams in the crowd, we say this a lot, is like it's always more secure to store your assets natively. And so if you want to use Emblem as just a transaction layer, that's okay. If you want to use it as a storage layer, go ahead. But at the end of the day, right, if you want to take it natively, you have to go through a few more steps, whether it's Emblem or wrapped Bitcoin or whatever kind of bridging tool or interoperability tool that you're using. But it is, unless you have a purpose of using the asset on a different chain, right? Or if you, right, and for some people, right, we get a lot of people who wrap their ordinals and counterparty, and they're just like, hey, I like to see everything on one page on OpenSea, and that's like the entire purpose because I want to hang it up in a gallery, right? Where other people are using it just to, find liquidity on a more liquid chain at the moment, or some people want to go lend against it in more liquid markets. But if you're not doing anything, then it's much better to store it natively, no matter what type of Bitcoin asset it is, whether it's an NFT, a rune, fungible token, or the native asset. I do have a question for you, though. The title of this is Coinbase is coming to ordinals. And I saw Robert, had that big raise, which shout out to him. That's quite incredible. Do you have any insight, not into the product they're building, but what Coinbase found attractive in SAT flow and as their first entrance into ordinals from the institutional investing side?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think I've ever actually talked to him about, like, why that or how they were excited about it. I do remember in passing that he said that the other side of the table were runes holders of some specific tokens and so forth, and they were actually original etchers, or not etchers, but minters of some of these tokens on Luminex and other platforms. So it's kind of interesting to see their like venture investing team actually being, a part of us in the silos quite silently. So I think, simply because they're using this exactly like we are, I think they found it as an exciting value proposition, which is pretty amusing, if I'm honest.
Yeah, the VCs are in the trenches. I remember having a conversation towards the end of last year with a popular VC in the Bitcoin space, and we literally talked about an hour of how they were aping Doginals at the time, right? Like the most kind of like obscure thing. But for a lot of them, we realized that it's not just about investing; it's about kind of learning the system, and they have to go through the same trials and tribulations, and wins and losses, just as the degens do. I mean, that's most successful crypto VCs are generally the ones who graduate from the trenches, or graduate right from being just degen traders, rather than the other side of moving from a traditional VC to a crypto VC. Those type of ones generally see them do quite bad. Where the ones who incubated, on chain for a few years, and then took their wins and experience and moved to become a capital investor, tend to be the more successful ones, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, no, I remember this story. I mean, Sequoia, which is a large Silicon Valley VC, they entered crypto way back when, and they actually left crypto a year and a half ago, simply because every single investment that they made was so mid curve and so all like entirely about real world applications, that I think they were one of the most underperforming funds out there, that they just could not sustain. I mean, I don't think they even deployed the entirety of the fund, but they were just so underperforming that I think that they couldn't even make a case for raising another fund, or a smaller fund, or a bigger fund. So totally agree with you. Guys like Tyler at UTXO, who's on Spaces with us, who's messaging me about what runes I'm buying, trading, what ordinals. I mean, he's in the weeds for sure. And I think it's just nice to have that level of community and care. Yeah, I mean, the Bitcoin pie is so much bigger than just ordinals and runes, but it's the one that I think the one that has users that really deeply care about Bitcoin while still having fun on Bitcoin. Whereas all the other guys, the farmers, the DeFi farmers, unfortunately, I was one of them back in those days. But yeah, the DeFi farmers that care about Bitcoin and earning yield on their Bitcoin are, truly not having as much fun with us. Like they care about yield, and they care about, I guess, yield bearing games and VC value accrual that they can leverage off of in an airdrop, which a lot of this space is that helps bootstrap capital TVL, but it's never really sticky capital and user base. And I think everyone with a ordinal PFP here is the most sticky user you could ever ask for, and building a product around us as individuals, you're likely to succeed over a longer duration of time, and build a competitive edge. I think is the key element, right?
Yeah, I completely agree.
You make
So,
a dubstep again, bro.
oh, am I really? Maybe it was
Yeah,
us. Huh.
there it is. But it was dope. Good. It sounded like you were in a vault again.
I think it's me just putting a hand on my wire, on the wire to the microphone. So I'll make sure not to do that. Joe, so I'm curious. I haven't heard your take in a while. I have tuned into a few of these shows, and you guys have done a good job. What's your current view or perspective on the state of just the overall kind of Bitcoin season 2 market right now?
I mean, look, I'm someone who has never stopped being bullish, despite all of the fluctuations. Yeah, I mean, it sucks to be down bad at times, but it's down bad. It's down bad until it's up only, as some people like to say. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we're starting to explore more in depth. Previously, like meta protocols and so forth, they were just cute ideas, and they tended to come from maybe a little bit more of a degen builder side.
Guys.
Did we lose him? Yeah, I think we may have lost
Yeah, I
him.
thought I was rugging.
Yeah, it's all good. What's good, Bunsey? Well, maybe wait for Joe
Dude,
to come back. What's good?
not too much, man. Just digging deep into CB, WTPC, Bitcoin. Actually, dude, funny enough, I've been looking into Bell's, Adams, and what you guys have been doing there, and mainly brought up around the fractal discussion, because they are mining essentially half of the supply, et cetera, where Bell's could potentially offer a similar solution. Um, so, yeah, I was actually chatting with Harry yesterday and we were brainstorming some ideas around potentially utilizing Bell's. But yeah, it's funny. Adam, you're in the crowd. You came up yesterday, and yeah, dude, what's the alpha on Bell's? It's been pumping. It's the first time Adam's call has ever worked. Um, how does that feel, Adam? I'd love to know. Like your first coin, 2xing. Really proud of you.
Yeah, yeah. So we had our we are doing our inscription show yesterday, and we're literally right as we started talking about Bells. Jack shows up, and the entire Ordinals Wallet team shows up, and I was like, man, you guys have probably just send everything in the group chat. So with Bells, it's their 3.0 upgrades coming, so it's gonna have faster transactions, right? Lower throughput or higher throughput, faster transactions, lower fees. It'll actually work, right? I guess is the whole idea. There was a little bit of interest I saw. There's a few builders. So one, I don't think we've shared this news yet, but it's been in the trenches, I guess. We have a builder who's building a UTXO fungible token bridge on top of us, and we're going to start that with Bells. So you'll have like V Bells as an ERC20, and then we're going to go through the whole ringer with Doge and Bitcoin and runes and all the stuff. But some other Bitcoin builders have started to look at Bells. Obviously the Ordinals Wallet team, they've supported Bells for a while, and then the OpNet guys from CBRC20 are deploying on Fractal, and then they're coming over to Bells Coin to kind of look around, and you're starting to see some of the similar community between Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and Bells. It's pretty interesting. But Adam's a meme lord now.
Yeah, Bunsey, never fade my calls, man. They always run to zero, brother. Never fade them.
Yeah, dude. If I ever have to balance out my state and do taxes one year or something, I'm just gonna follow Adam and just
Dude,
all my profits go to nothing and I have no taxes to pay.
what you can tell, but I never do calls. That's the best. That's the best strategy for not being called out on calls. Although I have been obviously into Bells because it's kind of my baby, right? So actually the cool news is, and this might be of interest to some people in the crowd. Look, I'm not obviously Bitcoin's Bitcoin, right? This is a meme coin, meme chain. Think of it as like a bigger, faster, stronger version of Dogecoin, with better tokenomics. That's basically it. Um, the lead dev told me yesterday they are going to be enabling Opcat in probably the coming week or so on testnet, so people can play around. It's going to be coincide at kind of the beginning of October. They'll launch it on mainnet. So Opcat is going to be, if all goes well, live on Bell's Coin, so people can play around with it. I'm thinking of it, for Bitcoiners, it could be a place where you do some tests, just testnet type stuff. where it's really inexpensive, cheap to build, and if it breaks, nobody cares. That's the way I'm thinking about it. And we
Wait. Everything was solid until you said, and then it breaks. Nobody cares.
nobody cares. Well, look, dude, we
Uh,
haven't been able, like, we've had ordinals, right, or what they call bellinals for since maybe a few weeks after we restarted the chain. We have over 100 million inscriptions, but we haven't been able to really trade them for like at all. Like they haven't been
so you
tradable.
guys essentially
So
just staked them all. You
so
guys are like,
so
no, this
shit
is a
can,
staking period. We're just
bro.
earning yield.
What I've learned is shit can be broke, dude. It's like when there's a small team basically figuring this stuff out, it's all good, and nobody really cares because you got them for free or whatever, or near free. Um, kind of like your bitmaps. And so at the end of the day, I'm most excited that we've built this kind of like, I mean, it's just people like the story, and so we built this kind of like incredible community, not through my effort necessarily, just people kind of getting behind it and people joining and building just because they who was it yesterday? I guess it was Jack, wasn't it? Jake, it was Jack
Yeah,
who
it's
was
Jack.
who gave this like kind of really interesting investment thesis, which I'd never thought about really, but he's like, look, if you can buy a significant portion of the underlying infrastructure and then try to build something, it's like what you build may or may not work, right? May or may not gain traction. But even if it doesn't, if you're adding to by building, you're adding obviously to the ecosystem. Um, if the ecosystem wins at all, you kind of have this underlying, win that you get by buying a significant portion of the ecosystem. And people have been able to do that with bells over the last, several months. It was literally down at like 15 cents.
Yeah, I
So
mean that alone right there is like rallying a community to build on a network. But for those that don't know, Bells was the first fork of Litecoin from the Doge creator, correct?
yeah,
And there were
exactly. He forked Litecoin, made Bell's coin in December of 2013, launched it, and about 8 days later got with Jackson Palmer and launched Dogecoin. And Dogecoin took off, literally took off like a rocket. And basically, people stopped mining bells within like 18 months. Like nobody cared about Bell's coin because Dogecoin literally just, dominated. And multiple people have tried to restart it. It's been tried to restart like 4 or 5 times, some more successfully than others. And we restarted it in December of last year. Basically, a friend of mine had seen a tweet about bells. I'd never heard of it, and I contacted a developer friend of mine, Luke, who basically got it going within a few hours. And you can see I'll pin my post again, but I talked about it about a week later, and it was probably the most popular post I'd ever done. And within 12 hours, you could mine it on your PC when I launched the post. And within 12 hours, though, it was being mined by big mining farms in China, and the hash rate exploded. The chain almost broke a bunch of times because the difficulty adjustment, it couldn't adjust. We had blocks stuck for literally hours. So it was rocky. It was a rocky start. But because it's so small, we have been able to make major upgrades to the chain. And fortunately, we've been able to Bitmain. You guys know Bitmain, obviously. Bitmain has been obviously helping us a lot, pushing us because it provides really nice additional revenue to people who buy their miners. So they've been very supportive. We've been able to get the pools in, and all the miners kind of on board, the marketplaces and stuff, to switch over to our upgrade, and basically create just you know like a wish list of like what you would want from a really, pretty solid proof of work blockchain. And yeah, so these updates are going to make it far more usable, more fun to build on. It just has a lot of good things, along with what I think is a really fun story, especially when Billy Marcus, you guys know him on Twitter. If you haven't like recognize him, but he's a huge, Twitter personality. Elon retweets him and stuff like that. But that his two, original coins you can basically trade them against each other. You can swap them. Is really cool. I think just from a kind of blockchain crypto history that both now live. And Bells is I could say pretty solidly is going to live now. Which was definitely not. It was very shaky at the beginning. I think it's fun and cool. And yeah, I mean, it's one of I consider Bitcoin the original meme coin, but it's certainly one of like the first meme coins ever. That's for sure.
Well, I'm proud of you. You have a call that
Dude,
works.
that is a crazy story. I know Harry and the Ordinals
Yeah, get
podcast
up here, Harry. We were
we're
we
big
were
on.
nerding out on it yesterday.
I just
Dude,
want to
yeah,
point out. I just want to point out from my earlier statement that anytime Bells is spoken in a space, somebody from the Ordinals wallet team appears within like 3 minutes. It happens literally every time.
I think Harry's we've nominated him the CEO of Bell's Coin. So he's the new CEO. It's a rotating CEO position, but he's the CEO now.
So it
I
sounds like
mean,
Ordinals Wallet's new features are interoperable with Bell's Coin. Is that what I'm hearing? No, it's been kind of crazy to see the reinvigorated interest. It sounds like Bell's Coin is a UTXO based blockchain. Is that right? Yeah.
yeah, it's a
Okay.
fork
Cool.
of Litecoin,
Yep.
similar to Doge. But that's what got me really interested was I think who wrote the thread, but potentially fractals, just for I don't know, for the sake of understanding, very similar to BSV in block times and speed. And that's essentially what, Bell's coin could be too. Um, and that comparison really kind of interested me in like exploring it as a potential solution. But I think it was Jack that said something like that. But yeah, it's a UTXO based. It's super interesting. Harry has built a marketplace for it, and I was going through some of the tools yesterday,
The marketplace
and
did. I just need to clarify. It did work for a period of time. It did work, and I blame the blockchain more than I blame Harry. Obviously, Harry and those guys
it's
are.
way easier to blame Harry though. He's right here. The blockchain can't make funny memes. We
I mean,
no.
let's just say the blockchain was fucked. It still is kind of fucked, but it's gotten better, and it will get better hopefully within a week. I did pin up top. Feel free to remove it if you want to, but that
Good,
is
get
kind
that
of
out of here.
that is my original post about it. Just so you guys understand the tokenomics of it. Basically, the miners have been earning, I don't even know, it's like 300,000 Bell per day. So they dump the price. It's just been a perma dump for literally months. And it's still May, right? They still have like a few more months until the next halving. But if you think about, I think the total supply right now is like 40 million. And so they have about 20 million more to mine that I'm sure, will dump on your ass. But once that's mined, the reward drops to two Bell per block, or about 1,500 Bell per day. So the mining literally drops by like 90 some odd percent. And after that, it's basically 1 million Bell per year in tail emissions, if you think about it that way. So we get to 60 million, then it's 1 million Bell per year to infinity. And so yeah, that's the kind. Think of it as 60 million as the total supply if when you're doing your calculations.
Well, I'll say this: this is one hell of a community takeover. Solana meme coins would dream to have a takeover as good as this one. So yeah, kudos to you, Adam, and everyone else who's been reinvigorating a dead chain. Maybe it's not going to be dead, but at the end of the day, it's going to be another meme chain, meme coin. I mean, you basically built value out of nothing, which is clever. I mean, there's just been so much reinvigorated interest to other UTXO based blockchains more recently. Partially to blame because people are getting more comfortable in this environment. Now, is it the best UX? I don't necessarily think so. I think account-based models are much more easier to work with. From a development perspective, conceptualizing how you're going to form a transaction in a UTXO based format with fungibles, it's not easy. I'll put it that way. It takes a little bit of thinking, and it takes someone who can think outside of the box to get things off the ground at this point in time. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of why we're having such a big push to bring VMs to Bitcoin, because it is much more easy to understand and get over this hump. Whereas like Bitcoin script and UTXO, I mean, there's only so much we can properly do with it, and it might work for some applications. But I think having a VM on Bitcoin in some capacity is the ultimate unlock from a developer usability perspective. I think oftentimes I think about it this way: developers have an ROI on time as well. Is it worthwhile for them to learn a new way of thinking or building or programming applications? If it's going to take them a year, that's a year's worth of time that they could have leveraged and utilized, in Solidity and in Rust in smart contract based environments. And that skill set, if they're wrong, is basically going to zero. I mean, it's not going to be a functional reward on time. So this is kind of like why I think we're leaning towards a path of least resistance, which is adopting Solidity and Rust smart contracts on Bitcoin. I think eventually, and on these L2 side chains, whatever you want to call them, which is kind of why I'm a little bit thrown back and surprised on Fractal, because there is no VM in Fractal. It's still not necessarily that much more expressive, I would say. But again, that's maybe a mid-curve take. I know the degens will have some fun there, and ultimately, maybe something happens there.
Yeah, I would say from the first half of the year, where all the Bitcoin L2s were mostly EVM based, or if not all of them, right? That was pretty much as far away from being a Bitcoin L2, right, as possible. From traditionally where you had Rootstock and Stacks, who were kind of first to the scene. Their whole vision was to try to tie their side chains as close as possible to Bitcoin. And I think now you're kind of seeing the pendulum swing the other way, right? With things like with Arc Network, with OpNet, Track's been there for a while, and Fractal, where now they're trying to, get as close to layer one as possible. And everyone's kind of doing it in a variety of ways. I would say Fractal is one of them. Maybe just because that team, right, is from Bitcoin SV. So that's where they feel their edges, and that's where they feel most comfortable developing. I'm sure they have some other kind of ideas in store. But that's kind of just like where I'm seeing the current state of ordinals, or Bitcoin season 2 now is basically a mean reversion to getting back to the core, the core root of Bitcoin. And some of the marketing, unfortunately, is still there, right? Because they say it's right, fractal Bitcoin, even though it's a fork, right? So it's not Bitcoin, but it's kind of the same idea as these things that are saying Bitcoin L2, even though it's VM based. I think it's more just saying now the intent, right? The intent of the chain is to focus on Bitcoin assets, which also goes back to the meme of the very beginning of the conversation we had, that everything's a Bitcoin L2. And that meme is, I think, just becoming a reality now at this point.
Everything is a Bitcoin L2. I agree with that. I mean, one project that I found yesterday or been doing more research into is Zeus, using Solana as like a trustless bridge to wrap Bitcoin too. And what I've really been digging into is all the yield opportunities coming with, or even more yield opportunities coming with Bitcoin assets being wrapped, being like deployed to be put to work. But I do think it's interesting to really examine like true price discovery comes from all like centralized exchanges bridging these things to EVMs. Like no Bitcoin is traded directly on Bitcoin in a way that true price discovery occurs. So like yes, we don't like centralized exchanges for obvious reasons. And for that, there's a lot of solutions coming around that. Um, but it's really going to be interesting to see how this programmability phase, if I dare say, Bitcoin season 3, with, you know, um, kind of unlocking the a true trustless bridge, and what that opens up to bring these assets to Coinbase, to bring these assets to Solana, to be, used as uh, liquidity and reference to a stable. Um, that's kind of where my head's been at. I want to see if anyone has any thoughts on that.
My kind of take is I get that, I understand that, but in a way, I'm like, well, who's building something really interesting or cool to use? Um, I'm reminded of like the bull run in 21 of NFTs, and it was like where everybody was like, oh, Coinbase is going to launch a marketplace or whatever. Just looking for this like next liquidity bubble where people could exit their positions and stuff. And I'm like, that like always runs out. And I don't know. I'm hopeful that, you know, these different layers or whatever are going to, entice somebody to build something, that actually is like interesting or cool. And I don't see much talk about that, honestly. And maybe those guys are building in secret. I hope they are, but I just, so much of it just feels like, how can we move liquidity around in the system rather than how can we build interesting things that, end users are going to find it's
Well,
attractive rather than just like
I hate
another
to break
farming.
it to you,
Yeah.
Adam. Like, stables are like the only real use case of crypto thus far, and everything else is just like hot potato musical chairs, user offboarding experiences.
How dare you, bro? Look at my PFP, bro. Do you see that PFP? This
Dude,
is my PFP. It is mine alone. You can look at it, but this one is mine, bro.
I
So I
just
disagree. There are other use cases in crypto, man.
a JPEG that I
Yeah,
just
bro.
saved. No, no, I agree with you. I think that for the case of getting more unique users, not unique wallets, we do need these like social apps like Pump.Fun to bring attention. But I think it's short-sighted. Like that, a lot of that. Imagine if like you were just like, you don't have to imagine, but imagine you were like a normie, and like you're on Twitter, and like one of these celebrities launch a token. You go to Pump.Fun. You're like, holy shit, how do I get Solana? You get Solana. By the time you buy it, you're at the top, and then it just dumps. You're
Sure.
just like, dude, fuck crypto. Like,
Well, I mean, look, this is like the core. Look, crypto's the best medium for gambling. Like, I mean, we're seeing that, across the timeline. The two best apps in crypto right now are Polymarket and Pump.Fun, right? So gambling, and I think it harkens back to Eric Voorhees, with Satoshi Dice. Like gambling is crypto's first real like super use case, I think, in a way. And so leaning into that, why isn't the entire NFL gambling on crypto and stuff? Why isn't that all happening? And it may be, I don't know. Um, so I'm not averse to leaning into gambling because I think it's a great use case for crypto. Um, but
I,
even beyond that, and I think people we don't. I mean, we obviously in Bitcoin spaces we tend to be like the kind of base layer builders and developers. So I get that to a degree, but in some ways, I also feel like we need to start, thinking about or talking to people or encouraging people to build just fun, cool shit. I don't know. Maybe I'm a dreamer.
everyone, you hear that? Go get your rug ready. Deploy that,
No,
and
Bunty. No, no, Adam, I couldn't agree with you more. It's the thing that's actually going to move the needle in this space and grow the pie, and make it feel less like PvP. I mean, we have been in PvP mode for quite some time. People are kind of jumping around from place to place, from asset to asset, from token to token. Things are getting more dilutive. There's just more optionality. And when we come to a moment like this, the problem isn't that the market is dead or anything like that. There's still viable users. It's just there's no net new individuals, there's no net new wallets, there's no net new people actually having fun. And I think the way that you just push things forward is by that, is, you know, increase the expressivity of like what can be done. Yeah, it should be pretty interesting over the next little while.
I mean, I'd layer on, like, imagine, like, I mean, the whole timeline's talking about Polymarket, right? Like, a lot of people don't even know that it's on Polygon, right? Like, actually, nobody gives a shit that it's on Polygon, which I think is really interesting, right? And this is like, you know, at Emblem, when Jake and I talk and stuff, this is the idea, is that whoever builds that next cool thing, like, nobody will give a crap that it's on Solana or fucking, I don't know, Optimism, or who cares, right? The only thing they'll care about is that it works, and that it serves them in some way, that they love it, right? And I don't know. So me, I get really bullish when I start thinking that in that kind of light, because it just helps me frame, you know, the overall market and where we are. And yes, it's super PvP, and, you know, I realize we're at that point in the cycle, and, you know, at that point, that's when I start looking like, well, what's being built now that might be the next thing that we kind of, you know, that just generates interest, you know, in a way that's not, you know, how can I get more liquidity for my Bitcoin? I don't know. That's just my view.
Yeah, it's the application layer that's winning this cycle, right? The application layer for meme coins, which is Pump.Fun. Also the trading bots as well, right? All the trading bots are absolutely printing right now.
Yeah,
Which
that was a crazy stat. I'll try and look for that tweet if you guys didn't find it while Jake tells you about it. It's crazy.
there was a screenshot that came out the other day where they were showing the most fees earned through all the protocols and blockchains over the last 30 days, and Pump.Fun was number one with $33 million. And then in the top 15, there was like 5 or 6 trading bots that had all made over $10 million, $5 to $10 million in trading revenue. And then you'll get Polymarket as well, right? That's kind of the application layer. And kind of final point here is both of these ideas had been kind of tested before, not Pump.Fun, but meme coins are something that exists since 2013. Prediction markets had been around since Augur in 2014. So really, you know, whatever the next winning application is, has probably been attempted already. It was just kind of too early. They were just too early to the times, which is something Adam and I could talk about a lot. But I got to hop off here. Adam, I have a show in 30 minutes. I love that you guys are doing this, Farmer Joe and Bunzi, and I'll definitely join more whenever I see it pop on the timeline.
Yeah, actually, that kind of leads us to kind of a conclusion. I got to get going as well, so we're wrapping this up a little bit shorter than earlier than we used to. But Adam, Jake, you know, thanks for joining and chatting so much about what you guys are up to, perspectives on bells, and all the degeneracy around UTXO-based blockchains, meme coins, and so forth. Till next time, catch you guys on Tuesday.